Painting watercolor orchids is easier than you think, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it, no matter your skill level. Hello wonderful people, it's Genevieve, and my goal here on this channel is to teach you all about illustration and design. So if you're new, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the weekly videos, and so that you can join our wonderful creative community. And with that said, grab your drawing tools, and let's get started. So as usual, we're going to start by creating a new canvas so that we have somewhere to draw. Now for reference, these are the dimensions of the canvas I will be using, but make sure you pick dimensions that work for your own project requirements. Now if you're not exactly sure how to pick a canvas size, I have a video in which I teach you everything you need to know in order to make your decision, so we'll link that in the description below. Now one quick little note before we start, if you want to have my illustration here as a reference, you can simply go in the wrench icon menu here, select the canvas submenu, and then you're going to be able to activate this reference toggle, which is going to let you import a picture. If you want to download my reference as well as the color palette we're going to use in this video, they will both be linked in the description below, and they're totally free, so you can just download them and use them if you feel like it. Otherwise you can color pick your own colors, of course, that's totally okay. Now since this video is going to be very simple, pretty quick, the actual texture of the file, so this kind of paper vibe, is really quite important. Now there are so many different ways you can get texture in your file. You can get a pre-textured file. I know, for example, a lot of brush creators have those available. I personally do. They are in my big brush bundle, which will be linked in the description below with a special promo code. So whatever pre-textured file you have could work. But I'm trying something today. I am including a free sample texture. It is not as high a resolution you would find in my pre-textured file, but it's a way to get some basic texture. So you can either start again with a pre-textured file or download my texture if you want, or just go with a straight up white canvas. If you are working with a pre-textured file, just open it up in Procreate and you're going to see it has a few layers. So that's all you need to do. But if you are working with the free sample texture, you can download it, and once it is on your iPad, you simply have to go in the wrench icon menu here at the top, selecting the add submenu, and then selecting insert a photo. Then all you have to do is tap on the photo of the texture, which is going to import it in your file. Here I'm just going to rename it so that we don't get confused to sample texture. And very important here, I'm not going to get into all the details about blending mode. I have a whole video about that, so you can check it out. I will also link it in the description below. But make sure that you change the blending mode of this sample texture layer just by tapping on the little N to linear burn. That way the texture is going to blend well with the other colors. That's super important. Now again, I'm personally going to be painting in my pre-textured file, so I'm just going to go ahead and hide this texture so that I don't have duplicated textures. And then we're simply going to roughly sketch everything. So for that you can create a new layer. Here I have one that is already empty, but otherwise you can click on this little plus icon here at the top. And then you're going to rename the layer to sketch. And for the sketch, you can use any color of your choice because we're not going to see it in final result. I personally like to sketch with just a neutral gray. And in this video, I'm always going to be suggesting two different kind of brushes. One is going to be a free brush that comes with Procreate, and you can totally follow the video along with those brushes. And I'm also going to be suggesting brushes from my watercolor pack, which is part of the big brush bundle. Again, these brushes are not essential, but they do have a lot more texture and just a bit more of an organic feel to them, which is going to help you save some time and get more professional results in the end. But don't worry, I'm going to give you tips if you want to use the free brushes to achieve similar results. It just might be a little bit more time consuming. That being said, for a sketch, we're not going to see any final results, so the brush really doesn't matter. You can pick, for example, in the sketching panel, so the brushes that come with Procreate, the HB pencil. If you do have the watercolor bundle though, or the watercolor pack, sorry, you could pick the coloring pencil. So we're simply going to start by mapping out the branch, and you can really have any shape you want here. I'm going to go just with a slightly curved one. And then mapping out where the flowers are going to be, for now just with kind of circles or ovals. And for the demo, I'm only going to be drawing 3 flowers so I can show you 3 different angles you can draw them in. But I recommend having at least 5 flowers on your branch to make sure that it really looks nice and full. I'm just going to go with 3 so that this video is not super long for no reason. And you can also have some buds at the top, so instead of circles, those would be ovals, and they would also be smaller. So once you have your rough composition sketch like this, we're going to zoom in onto one of the flowers and sketch out the petals. Now I know the shape might be a little bit crazy looking, but it's pretty simple. just start with 2 ovals for the middle petals, like this. Then same size, but at the top, another petal like this. And then 2 smaller petals that are not actually smaller, it's just that they're hidden by the middle ones. So a little bit like this. Now it's probably going to look a little bit crazy, you're going to have lines everywhere, but that's okay. We just want to roughly map out everything and not spend too much time, so it's totally fine if your file is messy. So that's really the base structure for the petals. But to make your branch a bit more interesting, you want to make sure that you get some variations between the different angles of the flowers. So for example, if you want to draw a flower as seen from the side, all you have to do is make one side of the ovals bigger than the other. So what that might look like is, okay, I have my flower here. So this middle petal is going to be pretty big, but this one is going to be smaller and kind of more squished. The one on the top is going to remain the same. And then the 2 on the bottom are going to pretty much just follow along the middle ones. So again, pretty much the same thing, just one side is squished. You could also have flowers as seen from the back, so it's pretty much the same thing. You're going to have your 2 middle petals, then the one at the top, and the 2 small ones that are usually hidden this time are actually going to be the ones that we see the most, so you're just going to sketch them out. They're going to be pretty much the same size as the one in the middle. So take all the time you need here to sketch out crazy looking flowers like this, and once you're ready, we're going to move on to the line art. Before we do the line art, you might want to go ahead and lower the opacity of your sketch so it's not as much in the way as it is right now. So just tapping on the little N once more and then lowering the opacity quite a lot until you can just barely see your sketch. I'm going to leave mine a little bit more so you can see it on the screen still. And then you're going to create a new layer and rename this one to line art. Now for the line art, you're going to pick a very dark charcoal, almost black but not quite. If you're using the color palette, it's going to be this one right here, but otherwise you can see it's just very dark. And in terms of brushes, you have a few options. You could go in the inking panel that comes with Procreate, which is below sketching right here, and pick either the Ink Bleed or the Studio Pen. They're both going to work pretty well. Or if you have the Ultimate Watercolor brushes from the Big Brush bundle, you could pick the Thin Intense Watercolor. The only difference here again is you're going to have a little bit more texture with this brush. So really the main thing we have to do here is just add a U shape to the middle petals like this. And then from there, just drawing over the oval that we had, maybe making it a little bit more pointy at the end. Going to do the same thing on the other side, a little bit like this. You can then draw the petal at the top, the petals on the bottom. Now in the middle here, we kind of have this weird open gap, so we're going to fill it in with 2 teardrop shapes like this on the sides, as well as a bean shape at the very bottom. And it's totally okay if you have overlaps, it's going to be part of the more organic vibe, so you don't need to have super perfect lines at any stages in this video. So I'm going to stop talking here to let you focus on drawing your outlines, but I'm going to keep my video going in the background so you can use it as a reference, and we're all going to meet once we have our outlines complete so that we can add some colors. And with that, it is time for the secret password, but we're going to do it super quick today because this is a quick and easy video. So if you've watched this far, just let me know in the comments below how many orchids you're drawing on your branch, and then we're going to keep going. Great, so once you have your line art all complete, you can go ahead and hide the sketch layer. We don't need it anymore. And if you have any overlaps that you don't like, you could go ahead and erase them. I personally like these. I feel like it adds to the modern vibe of the piece. So I'm just going to leave that as it is right now. But again, feel free to just go back and erase anything that you want to tweak a little bit. So to add the colors, we're going to create a new layer and we're going to put this one below the line art. We're also going to rename it to colors, and we're going to leave the opacity and the blending mode as just normal. Now you can really have any color flower you want. I'm going to go with just a nice little pink, but feel free to experiment with whatever you want. But we're going to do it in 2 stages. We're going to start with a super light version of the color, and then we're going to move on to a brighter, more intense one. So just pick something super light, whatever the hue is, it doesn't matter. And in terms of brushes, once more, you have a few options. You could go in the airbrushing panel, so the brushes that come with Procreate, and pick the hard brush. And then you would lower the opacity, which is this slider right here. It might be on the right for you, but the bottom one, and lower the opacity around 40%. Now you can experiment, but essentially the goal is that we want to be able to have this overlapping effect once we overlap a few strokes. If you do have the watercolor brushes though, go ahead and pick the Dark Edges watercolor. And here, no matter which brush you're using, you're going to make it fairly big because we're just going to try and quickly fill in the shape, but we do want to have some areas with gaps and some areas where the color go outside the line. So making sure that you have a big brush is going to not only be quicker, but you're going to have this effect by default because it's just going to be too hard to stay within the lines. So something a little bit like this is more than good enough. And you can do that with all of your flowers if you want, or you could leave some without colors like I have in my example right here. You can see these two I left not colored. Again, I feel like it helped with the modern vibe. But in my example, since I only have 3, I'm going to color them all, otherwise it's going to look a little bit not finished. But if you have a bunch of flowers on your branch, you can experiment with just coloring a few out of them, and you're going to get a really cool design at the end. So now that we've roughly colored everything, we're just going to go back in with, like I was saying, the more intense version of your color. So if you're using the palette, it's going to be this one right here. Otherwise, just take your base color and make it more saturated and a little bit darker. And with the same brush, you're just going to brush over the middle part of your flower, but leaving the very middle between the teardrop and the bean shape not colored again. So it's going to look a little bit like this. And you can see that once more, it's not something precise at all. You're just adding a blob of color. This one, since it's seen from the back, I'm not going to touch it, but anyone that you see the actual middle front part of it, you would color. And you could also go back in and add kind of a shadow effect by just overlapping your stroke to make the color darker so that we can tell that this petal is actually behind these two right here. Doing the same on this flower. So I know that right now it looks absolutely crazy, but in the next step, we're going to blend everything in. We're just going to, before that though, finish adding the colors. So if you want, you can add a bit of a yellow-orange in the middle of the flowers. If you have the palette, it's going to be this one right here, but you can obviously color pick whatever you want and whatever would work well with your flowers. Same brush though, we're just going to add a little bit of a dot in the middle, nothing more fancy than that. And last but not least, we might want to go ahead and just paint the branch. So for that, you can use a green. I like my green to not be as vibrant as the other colors, just so that the focus really is on the flowers and not the branch itself. So again, just more of a muted green. And this time probably making your brush a little bit smaller, just so that it doesn't go too much outside of the branch. Now there's not one magic number to set your brush size to here because that size is going to depend on the brush you're using as well as the size of your canvas. So just experiment, but it really doesn't need to be anything particular. So just something that works for you is totally fine. Awesome, so we only have a few steps left to do, mainly blending the colors so they don't look quite as crazy, so we're going to do that right now. And once more, you have a few options on how you can achieve that result. If you're working with free brushes, you're going to pick the smudge tool right here at the top, so the finger icon. And you're going to set it to the soft brush in the airbrushing panel. If you do have the watercolor bundle though, go ahead and set your paintbrush, so not the smudge tool, really the paintbrush, to the water blend once more from the watercolor pack in the big brush bundle. So the water blender is at the very bottom and it is actually a brush, but it behaves like a smudge tool. And once you have either your smudge tool or your water blender, you're just going to go over any weird edge that you want to blend in. And it's going to be a bit like if you're adding water to your watercolor paper. So it's going to smudge the color in. Now, if you're using the smudge tool, there is no randomness included in the brush like there would be in the water blender, which is made specifically to mimic watercolor. So you're going to need to manually add some randomness. And what that means is when you're smudging, instead of smudging really neatly, kind of all nicely following the curve, you're going to have to do random crazy little scribble movement with your brush. So that's just one little thing to keep in mind, but if you're using the water blender, you can pretty quickly just go over the edges and they're going to automatically blend in kind of a more organic way. So super simple step, it should just take a few seconds, but it should really help with the watercolor look. Now, once you're happy with your blending, we're also going to add a bit more color variation because right now this is a bit too flat for my liking at least. And for that, there's a pretty neat trick. So you can use the selection tool here at the top, setting it to freehand and making sure that the color fill right here option that is deactivated. That's super, super important. And then you're going to draw kind of a weird random selection over your piece. And once you have your selection, go ahead and click on feather and then set the amount to something around 30%. Now the exact amount is going to depend on your own canvas size, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't need to be exact. So 30% or something like that is totally good enough for what we need to do here. And then you're going to go in the adjustment panel at the top, selecting hue, saturation, and brightness. And you're going to play a little bit with the hue slider, either moving it a little bit towards the left or a little bit towards the right, which as you can see is going to change your colors a little bit. And once you're happy, you can just tap on the selection icon, which is going to exit everything. And you can repeat the step how many times you want to add as much color variation as you want. So just drawing a crazy shape, feathering the shape around 30%, going in the adjustment panel at the top, selecting hue, saturation, and brightness, and then playing with one of the sliders. You could play with just the hue, just the brightness, maybe not the saturation because this is going to make your colors look more gray, which is not necessarily what we want. But yeah, just playing with the hue or the brightness to add some color variation within your piece, especially if you're working with the free brushes. Since you don't have the randomness within the brushes themselves, you had to manually add it. So you might want to repeat this step, 3, 4, 5 times. It just takes a few seconds, but it makes a big, big, big difference. And the last little thing you might want to do is add some splatters. So for that, go ahead and create a new layer, rename it to splatters. And we're going to use the blending mode linear burn so that the splatters react really nicely with the base colors we have. Now in terms of colors here, you can pick whatever color you use in your piece. So I'm going to go back to the bright pink. And for the brush, to be honest, there is no perfect brush that comes with Procreate for the splatters. You could try in the spray paint panel the Giclée brush. But as you can see, it's very, very dense, so you would need to use it super sparingly. You could also go in the Elements panel and use the Driven Snow, but these splatters are a little bit more square than round, so they're not quite as watercolor-y as you might want. But otherwise, if you have the watercolor bundle, just pick the splatter brush. Then no matter which brush you're using, all you have to do is quickly paint over your piece to add some splatters, which should bring everything together very nicely. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn how to paint more watercolor pieces in Procreate, I highly recommend you check out this playlist in which I'm going to teach you exactly that. But before you leave, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the weekly videos. Then click on the link right here, and I'll meet you there.